I'm really glad to have a dear, dear friend and also an exceptionally talented individual, woman leader, brilliant architect of financial situations for businesses that were struggling, taken over, etc. And also a person who pushes me to be my best, and that's Joelle Choo. Let's
Thank
welcome
you.
Joelle here.
Thank you, Keith. That's very complimentary.
And I mean it when I say that Joelle pushes me to do my best. I mean, she is one of the folks that I have never had to ask, hey, can you follow up on this? And I've never had to ask at all, what should we be doing next? She has this energy that when you go and meet up, you know that there's going to be, project and progress, and then actually something that happens out of this. And not only that, accountability. She has high expectations of everyone that she works with, that they're going to be able to deliver. And that's what makes Joelle a really fantastic person to work with and mentoring leader as well. She has had a storied career, starting off bravely at NTU, doing it at some accountancy there, and then going through, and she eventually landed over at General Electric in the US. I like to just highlight that because we're going to spend a good amount of time on General Electric and in its heyday from the 80s through the 2000s. And we'll also, then she went on to Cisco Systems, and was able to see things that were going on there, and then came back to Singapore, but through Indonesia. She worked with a Indonesian family-owned business, multi-billion-dollar business, as the chief technology officer there, and worked directly with the chairman of that business. So she got to see and understand the mindset, what drove him and this billion-dollar business with, of course, family members and everything in it. And she, as a professional manager, making great things happen there. She then joined a consulting firm, Deloitte, for a little while. Also, very much, and what you'll hear from Joelle is that she kind of drives points to her career as well. So very directed, and I think that's something that we should all strive to do as well. And now she's a National University of Singapore fellow. She works with us and teaches in our FinTech SG program, also creates custom programs for banks around the world, and has helped transform people's careers just by getting them some necessary key training and also giving them candid, very candid sometimes, feedback. So with that, I mean, I really enjoy and working with Joelle, and I hope that you all will enjoy listening to some of the same stories that I've heard and have been inspired by. All right, Joelle.
Yes, Prof. Keith. I'm all ears.
Fantastic.
After the introduction, I feel a little bit tired. You mean I did so much? So little?
Good, good, good. I'm glad. Exactly. Well, you've gone through several different geographies and businesses in your career, but could you take us back to the beginning? Is that something that you were thinking of doing back at NTU? What was on your mind just in the initial stages as you were preparing to graduate and selecting where you might work?
Okay, so where I am today was definitely not what I was thinking back then. I mean, coming from a family where you just kind of like, when you finish school, you get ready to go to university, you just pick what you can get in, right? I wanted to go to NUS and do business administration because I thought I could be a great marketing and sales person. That was my original career plan.
Mm.
And then I got my results, and my brother, he's the CFO himself. The whole family is all CFOs, right? He said, well, you managed to get into accountancy, so go accountancy. And so I did. And then, of course, having worked so hard to get into accountancy.
Oh no, it looks like we're having
at
technical.
least 2 years of can you
Okay.
get at least go into audit, right? So I kind of like went into audit, and it was very quick. Very quickly, I realized that I do not want to be in audit for life. I like the nature of the project work. The long hours, the camaraderie was excellent. I love working with my peers. You know, we're all on the same level. You know, all kind of like move up, same age. We party hard, we work hard. So, answer to your question, no, I wasn't expecting to move into IT, and kind of how I, you know, through audit, finance, I have to say all my accounting skills and audit skills, I apply it every day, even in my current role and what I do. So they are very useful trainings that I have to admit. So I kind of like moved on from being a finance person into IT, probably out of frustration, I'll be honest. Because back in GE, I was the finance lead for all our system implementation. And I'm talking about hundreds of millions of dollars we burn every quarter just to put in an Oracle system, an SAP system. And I think back then, every ask we had as a finance lead, as a functional user, my IT counterpart would say either a no, or it'll take 6 months or longer, or it'll cost me $500,000 at least for a report. So I used to, you know, I used to have my little private pool of shadow IT developers that would do this guerrilla things whereby we just have to prove IT wrong, that it doesn't take half a year and 500,000, you know, to do a report. And I remember during one of my one-on-one with my CFO, of course, you know, I would complain about, you know, IT, how they are not, you know, supporting the business, not forward thinking, not fast enough, not aggressive enough. We have to dot all the I and cross all the T's, you know, like sick and tired of that. And my CFO told me, you know what, Joelle, you seem to know what to do in IT. So why don't you go over there and be the IT leader, you know, and show them how to be, you know, how to be partners to the business, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, is that a punishment? Is that a way to tell me to, you know, quit my job? But you know, I turned it I did a very positive pivot on that and said, you know what, he's right. You know, and I got the finance and the operational skill set, and a lot of times it's just really needing a translator to present to IT why we need to do this for the business. So from then, I crossed over to the technology team, and I haven't looked back. And I find it the most exciting journey ever since. And the funny part is, when I became an IT lead, guess what I say when my user asks me for stuff? No. It was interesting because I finally understood why the answer was no. You know, in terms of prioritization, security, governance, there's a lot of things the IT owns and that end user like myself sometimes don't know, have no visibility to. So I had greater appreciation of the function. So that's my journey, short, condensed, on how I crossed over.
All right. That's very interesting to hear how you said no at that point as well.
Yes.
I also want to pick up something you said along the way, which was these various experiences that you had, you now were able to apply as well. And so that seems to be a nice way to look at challenging experiences, maybe bad bosses, maybe different things that you didn't expect to have to do. Can you add some context or to that as well?
Oh yes, challenging bosses. So I've been very fortunate in my entire career. I would say that, you know, I always say I pick who I report to and who I work with. And then as you get older, you realize that that's kind of childish to think that you can always pick who you work for. And because people move and then you go through, at one point in my career, I was driving merger and acquisition. So you kind of like inherit staff, you also inherit bosses and all that. So yes, I had, in my younger days, I was probably a lot more, people always call me aggressive and abrasive, and I don't apologize about it. um, I was very much in your face, right? And it was, and I justify all my, action as, as I'm full of integrity. I wanted to do what's right for the business. So that's one thing that I learned in my career, especially during my time in GE. I think my GE experience really defined who I am as a professional, who I am as a manager, in giving good, candid feedback to my staff and my partners. It's called candor, right? Just call it as it is, can or cannot. There's no sugarcoating. And as a GE manager, we're all well trained in that, right? But again, not everybody can handle that candor. So, but I brought that GE-ness in me to other organizations, and naturally there was a lot of pushback, and eventually I got, and I realized that you need to build relationships, and before you start, um, showing people, not everybody knows you, right? They don't, from day one, they don't know that you are so, you're so focused on the greater good. It takes time to know people. So the important thing is, always try to stand in their shoes, from their perspective, identify what drives them. So identifying what drives them. So reading people was very important, skills that I picked up over time, that what is in it for them. And from there, you're able to create a win-win situation, help them be successful, and naturally you'll be successful. So don't focus on your personal interest and getting to your end game, but focus on your ecosystem. What is it that they need for them to be successful? And that's how you drive a total success, right? And also, I've also learned, this is the advice I give to a lot of people before they get married, actually. Have no expectations and you'll never be disappointed. So again, when I was in GE, right, I ran operations as in the warehouse, right? I would go down to the Chicago warehouse, and I remember, folks, you're coming from your ivory tower in the office, right? All of us are wired a certain way. We're very driven. We understand, getting to the company vision, executing on the strategy. But when you go down to the warehouse level, the pay grade is very different, right? And sometimes folks just want to come in, do their job 9 to 5 and go home. And again, in my younger days, I would think that that's wrong. No, we all must work 24/7 to service our customers, our shareholders. I would say, really lousy stuff like, this is ge.com, not .org. We are not a charitable organization. You need to, give your all for our shareholders. And that was how I was wired. And then, of course, that didn't go too well. It got escalated. I get sent for sensitivity training over at Universal Studio, play with the cartoons a little bit. I'm not kidding. I was really sent for your sensitivity training. But I learned, as you mature, you realize that you have better appreciation of different people have different needs. Some people are not, going there to try to get to the top, right? And again, I'm not saying I'm trying to get to the top. Not everybody have that greater appreciation, which is why we have leaders, we have followers. That's why we have a team, right? If everybody is type A, everybody is driven, then there's no followers, there's no doers, then nothing will get done, right? So managing difficult people, I think I'm learning to do a better job now in understanding what helps them be successful. And I always say, I love being a kingmaker, but not the king. So I think that was a very wise words from one of my CFO.
That's interesting. So that you've gone through and have, in a sense, said, I'm going to target helping, consulting, supporting people, as opposed to trying to be the CEO of everything, the boss of everything, etc.,
Yes.
Joelle?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. What what was that epiphany? What gave you that thought?
One of what I realized was that I think this was when I was in the US, and I think I was in Cisco. That's right. So I was driving, helping them I was a consultant for them to do a global supply chain transformation, you
Mhm.
know, kind of like preparing the pitch to the VP, SVP to get, basically to ask for a lot of money to drive this whole transformation. I mean, we're talking about changing out 200 plus systems and reports and everything with all these Foxconn, partners and everything. I mean, they spent 2 years, 50 million with one of the SI, and they couldn't create the deck to get approval. And then I managed to get through that and got them the approval. I think one of the mistakes I made was that without realizing the culture, the situation whereby a lot of people in that company kind of like got there through hardship, right? They've been in the company for years. And suddenly this Joelle Choo came in, 6 months into her job, decided to put herself as the program director of this multi-million-dollar program, right? That was definitely a dumb move on my part, I think, and very naive because I had no support, right? So, and I realized that, and I said, what do you mean? I mean, I even told my sponsor that I'm the right person for the job. I've done this. I got you the money, so I should be the PD. Why should I create this that went through the hassle, got the approval, and not have the privilege of being the PD? Why should I give it to somebody else? And yeah, that mark that okay. So yeah, I kind of like failed in that aspect. That's why I moved over to merger acquisition, left the supply chain team. But I learned from then that what I should have done was put somebody else who has been there for years, build the relationship, have the support and trust. So it wasn't that I couldn't do the job.
Mhm.
It's because I was an unknown, right? I was very focused on getting the approval. I built a lot of relationship externally, but not internally. And I had a very bad flaw as in I'm pretty judgmental, right? I look at people, I go like, nah, you're just not good enough. So I don't spend time to see the good in everyone and what everybody can contribute, can bring to the table. And
Mhm.
that was one hard, well, no, it was a lesson I learned that taking time to build relationship, building trust. So all they wanted was somebody, whether they've been there for a few months or a few years, doesn't matter. They needed to feel like that there's somebody they can trust that will not come in and, disregard them and marginalize their contribution. And I think I had that persona. I had that representation and all that. I'm just gonna come in and fire all of you and bring in my own star team, and because you are not GE enough for me, right?
Yeah.
So that was the feedback I got, and I learned it very good, and I make sure I don't repeat the same mistake again. So the epiphany came from that job that I didn't get. Yeah.
I
Looking
think
back,
that
it was good.
this is nice and that you talked about, and thanks for being so open with us about something that you learned and were able to pick up through a mistake. And I'm glad,
Oh,
yeah, this
I
is. Go
I
ahead.
always say, right, when you, as a consultant, there's a tendency for us to go like, oh, this client went live and this world, that world, it was a wonderful go live. So when I go to my clients, I like to share failures because when I pay you that kind of money, I expect you to deliver. I expect things to go smoothly.
That's
So
right.
what would be nice is for you to tell me the failures so that I don't I don't repeat or make the same mistake, right? So I think sharing failures in our society, I think sometimes um, because of pride and I don't know. I think you kind of like need to get to a certain age to really want to share failures. But I love sharing failure story. I've got a lot of them in my little
Okay.
bag.
And speaking of this, you've faced an obstacle like this and you shared how you overcame it. But then seems to be a big obstacle in a lot of people's minds today. Accountancy, business administration were huge draws, right? From the 80s, 90s, 2000s in terms of graduation. But now everything is Facebook and Amazon, etc., right? So how did you move from an auditor, a finance person, into this IT aspect? I know you talked about that you work through finance a lot of IT projects, but that's not nearly the same as actually doing IT.
Oh, yes, yes,
And
yes.
and are you a programmer as well?
No, but I can write a really good functional spec and I can do code reviews, but I can't program. So yes, so the one thing is that I always tell my daughter, I said, "Mommy is not as smart as you. You're definitely the smart one, right? But all things equal, I am very hardworking, and that is I read a lot. So when I moved into IT, the first thing I did was use my title and invited all the vendors. Any vendor that wanted to talk to me, I'll give them an hour's coffee time. I drank a lot of coffee every hour for the first 100 days, right? That again, applying the GE 100-day rule, right? When you get on the job, your first 100 day, you got to have a plan on how you're gonna, do that new job. By the 100th day, you would have a very clear plan on how you're gonna execute and bring change to your role. So for me, I benefited from the various vendors, partners, friends who are who are expert in IT and who were willing to share with me all their knowledge. Number one. Number two, I hired people who are better than me in IT and have them as driving the different tracks I have in the organization. Remember, it's not about me knowing it all. It's me being able to identify the qualities that each team member brings, their strengths, and then as a team, that's how we execute, right? So building a styler team with each with their own strength in the IT to kind of like fill the gap of my lack of technical skills, learning from my vendors, and of course at the end of the day, I'm not afraid to push the envelope and try, right? So I would push. A lot of times people like to play safe, right? Nobody gets fired for buying SAP or Oracle. Nobody gets fired for hiring a tier one vendor, right? So I like to defer a little bit and go for the tier twos, and because I know to be there in a tier two vendor service provider, you got to work extra hard. So chances are you're willing to push the envelope a little bit more so that you're the pioneer in developing a new solution or being a thought leader, right?
That's right.
So I spend a lot of my time reading manuals, I have to say. So don't, I never stop learning, right? So that's the key. So I do a lot of learning from my vendors, my partners, and my staff, and just trying.
But were you set up to fail, Joelle? I mean,
I think
going from this, how could you come into this with the mindset of, well, I'm going to take this huge risk?
so. I'll be honest, it was quite so I was IT a CTO for a very. So number one, Asia. Number two is a family business. Number three, I'm in a very male-dominated industry, which is food production. And then you go into the board, it's like a lot of senior men who looks at me like, you're a woman, So, and you're doing IT. You're my technology leader. So yes, when I first started on that role, I think I got a lot of, are you sure? The three words. I hated those three words. Are you sure? Should we check with somebody else? And usually that name will be like Mark, Peter, or James. I'm like, and one day, I mean, I was quite upset that, because I was pitching this status and this project then I'll tell you how I became, going into academia, right? Because I was talking to my CEO and my CFO, and I was like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. This is going to execute, and I don't do things like trust me. I said, this is how we're going to do it. And then I remember my CEO, no, my chief operation officer said, are you sure? You could be wrong, are you sure this is why, well, it's happening? And I was just like, I stood up and just went, dude, you pay me a lot of money to be right, not wrong. If I'm wrong, it is an insult to your choice of this person doing this role, right? So yeah, that didn't go down too well, but walked down the office to my corner office, put on my running shoes, went for a long run. But again, I proved that, my solution was right. But after I calmed down, I invited somebody who had a professor title in front of it, someone like yourself, to come talk to my management team. I said, meet Prof. So and so. He can validate my initial proposal from last week, because he has the credential, the background, and the technology training, and plus he's a professor, right? And it was, it was another epiphany, right? It's like, wow. He just went like, yes, we should do this and this. It was exactly what I said, except that it came from his mouth and not mine. And then I think, and yeah, we went ahead with what I pitched earlier on. But what I realized, that it wasn't so much that he's a man and I'm a woman. It was more so that, when it comes to technology, right? Especially new tech and everything, a lot of the board senior management folks are looking for people who is a independent trusted source. And I think for them, it's not that they don't approve of it just because I'm a woman, but more so they needed to be educated, which is also the beginning of when I decided to, and then that's when I met up with you, that I decided that I think education for technology is the precursor to adoption, especially for senior leadership, folks that are in their 40s, 50s right now, holding leadership position, making decision around technology adoption. I think when you arm them with knowledge, educate them, help them learn and understand, you can drive higher success rate in terms of adoption. So yes, that's my story on all the pushbacks and how, you learn at some point to you learn at some, I learned at some point that sometimes it's okay to let somebody else take the credit and be the person that give the idea. It doesn't have to be me, right? So now that's kind of like the past 5 years I've been advising government linked companies. That is like kind of like my last leg, right? I want to do GLCs, I want to do FMB. There was a couple of things I wanted to do before I finally retire, and GLC was almost like my last frontier or conquest, that companies that I really want to advise, because I know there's a lot of legacy in there, and also a lot of kind of like they're not very I guess they're very risk averse. So I realized that rather than me talking till my face turn blue, I find who are the so-called more credible folks that I should bring, and it allows decision making to be faster that way. So learn to use your network to help promote an idea, pitch an idea, even if it is yours, that's okay, right? Because focus on the outcome, and the outcome is for us to execute on a program, for a client to adopt a new technology. Doesn't matter who pitched it, right? As long as it's done, and we get a success story at the end of it.
And Joelle, the way you talk, it's as if you did this transformation from accounting to IT when you were in your 20s. You were young, ready to try things out. Is that were you in your 20s when this happened?
Late 20s.
Yeah, right.
Late 20s. I can't sit still. I like to change. I always say that you have to, and this part of the transformation journey, right? Yeah, you know, sometimes, usually when I'm like fourth or fifth year into a certain role, a certain career phase, I will start getting, you know, a little bit angsty and look at the environment, look at where, you know, what I'm doing is trending. I will actually put my resume out and see if I get any calls. If I don't get any calls, I start panicking and like, oh my God, I am not hireable anymore. So I think that's important. I've seen a lot of CVs that come across, and I always wonder, how did you work yourself into this situation whereby, you know, I look at your skill set is totally irrelevant. I mean, why? And I realized that a lot of us um, tend to get comfortable, right? You start out as a analyst, and then you become a junior manager, a senior manager, and then before you know it, in your 40s, you're already at a VP, a director, SVP. So the cost of taking the opportunity cost of taking a step back becomes you know, not something that you will entertain. And I think part of it is because we were trapped by the title and the package at that point in time. And I always tell people I mentor, sometimes you need to take a step or two step back so that you can leapfrog forward and build a sustainable you know, a career that's robust, right? So if you see, you know, I went from audit, finance to operations, I ran warehouses. And then at one point I was riding the wave of the ERP, right? ERP consultants were paying very good money. But I started seeing competition from, you know, outsourced countries and everything. And I realized that you have to differentiate, right? Just configuring and getting paid, you know, X dollar a day is not going to happen anymore, right? So that's when I pivot and move into merger acquisition, differentiate yourself and see what other value add you can bring against, you know, if you compare yourself to your peers or people offering the same kind of services. So same thing if you were to own your own company and provide, right? At the end of the day, it's your differentiation. You know, if you compare yourself to your competition, and that's how you're gonna bring in, you know, get more customers and market share, right? It's your differentiation. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I know that you've been working at business for many, many years. And so what is encouraging to me is I see a lot of people out in dead-end jobs, and they're in their 40s, and they have that CV like you talk about where perhaps the whole industry has gone. And in this case, during COVID-19, whole industries have changed. And so there's this, what you've talked about, I hope everyone on the call might take away some key points. Number one, never stop learning. You said that again and again
Yes.
throughout this call. Number two is that you connected with friends. I heard you say that a couple times. I learned from my friends. I made sure to build trust and so forth that during my particular roles. I mean, we can't forget, we can't just be, you know, just the job. It has to, humans are part of this whole thing as well. And you even made some mistakes where you ran ahead of building those human connections as well, right? I want to open it up to everyone on the call here. If there's questions you may have, please, you can put it in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, that's fine too. Someone want to have a question?
And to add to your point, while somebody's asking question about friends, right? I think I actually learned from you, Prof. Keith, about sharing your network. You know, I have to admit, I'm one of those lazy LinkedIn member. I'm not very active, and I've never been very proactive in connecting people. I'll be honest with you. It's only after everybody on the call is after I met Keith, you know, Prof. Keith, and I saw how he was always connecting people. You know, I'm new to him, right? I mean, probably our second meeting at EGN, and you know, Keith would start going like, "Hey, come meet Joelle. She is this and that," and then Keith will go, "Meet so and so. He is this. You guys now go talk. You know, I'm sure you." And I go like, this guy is so generous with his network. It's not even funny, right? And that's when I learned. I mean, we met last year, and I started making a note to self is that be generous with sharing your network, because what goes around comes around. And at the end of the day, when you're generous that way, people will appreciate it, right? You never know what and you know. And I've also noticed how some folks were a little bit guarded about sharing their network, and that's one thing that I observe again. I don't think it's an Asian thing. I see it, in the various cities that I work as well. Some could be, unconscious hoarding, but I think some of it could stem from insecurity, right? So I really think that folks should be confident about sharing their network and everything. And like I said, in everything we do, again, going back to GE, the 4 E's and the P's, you got to like have the energy, go energize, have edge, execute. Edge is about making decisions, tough decision, right? So at every juncture in my career, I make very tough decision, I would say, because sometimes it requires me to take many steps back from where I am in my career, right? So if I were to compare myself, I see my peers, a lot of them are partners, directors and all that, and then I go like, well, I'm not one of the partners and one of the big four. What's going on, right? But I look at what I have learned and done. I'm pretty happy and satisfied, because at the end of the day, the P's in the 4 E's and the P in GE context is passion, right? You got to be passionate about what you do so that every day is really like hobby and fun. I don't remember when was the last time I worked, to be honest with you, right? So
Yeah, that
it's
is so.
all fun, right? And people go
Yep.
like, how can you do all this and more? I said, because it's really fun. It's really, really fun.
Yep.
I'm not a workaholic. I'm just having fun with what I do, right?
That's the best way to do things. Let me
Yes.
just see. Anyone have a question that they'd like to ask Joelle? Okay, Ismail asked the question here. Being young, how can I put myself out there more and be more confident?
Very good question. So when I was young, in my early 20s, I remembered first I lie about my age. Yes, whenever people ask me how old I am, I would add 10 to it. So I lie a lot. I lied that I was 35 and I was 25. And then I totally understand where you're coming from, because that was exactly what I went through in my early 20s. I needed people to not think of me as some young Asian girl from Singapore, right? So I would actually dress like an old grand lady and lie about my age. I think when you're now that I look back, I think what happens is that the first thing is you got to listen more. That's a reality, because we haven't built up our so-called experience yet, right? So the key thing is to listen more to the people around you, especially older people who share their experience generously, right? At the end of the day, it's not about technical skills. It's also the soft side of things, the experience that really count, having a story, right? So be observant and arm yourself with learning experiences that you can share generously when you're in a group setting, in a networking environment. So because when you're able to share your experience and draw some highlights to it, that create interest in the people that's around you, that say, wow, that was a pretty interesting thing that you just did, and how you present it will over time build that trust and experience that people are looking for, right? So being young, with less work experience doesn't mean you don't have a good story to share, right? And then the other thing I think is really important is that observation and thinking, right? I noticed that sometimes when I go for a networking session, usually there's a few people who are really, open and talking and holding the conversation, not mentioning names. But sometimes people are not necessarily looking for so-called relevant technical experience in the topic or after a seminar, whatever. But besides your own personal experience, there's also your observation and your point of view. So having that point of view is important, because point of view is not meant to be right or wrong, but it shows, it demonstrates your ability to have a stand. And these days we look for people who make a stand, right? We don't like people sitting on the fan, like, yes, just like Yoda, right? Do or do not, there is no try, right? So you got to have a stand, and having that stand demonstrate your maturity as well, and confidence. So it can be anything. Have a observation, a situation, economic, things that's going on. Just have a point of view. And I don't see that in some of the people. A lot of people like to go like, well, I agree with you. I mean, have a point of view. What is your point of view? I think, point of view instill, demonstrate your confidence. Yeah.
Take a stand.
Yes, take a stand. I really cannot stand it when people don't take a stand. It's like, take a stand, right? There's no right or wrong. But I think, I don't know if it's just, I guess it's risk when you take a stand, right? People are afraid of being judged and all that. Maybe it's something that as you get older, you like we say, once you pass 40, everything goes. You really don't care what you think, what you think about me anymore. But I think, and we need to build that DNA of having a position, right?
That's right.
And then, yeah, otherwise you will never have the optimal outcome. So in GE, we cultivate that in the whole culture. There is, number one, all of us are taught to focus on the greater good. And all of us are passionate about doing that greater good for the company, right? And we will all make our stand very clearly. This needs to be done for the finance user. IT will say, no, this needs to be done from an IT point of view. So we just fight it out. And we will always have it's definitely an optimized outcome and solution. Rather than I go in and say, okay, IT, you say that, all right, we go that business, okay, fine, we'll, compromise. So first we have to stand, we put it out there, we don't compromise, we fight it out and come to an optimal outcome that meets first, not the ops needs, not the IT, not the finance, but the company's need, right? And that's how we work, and building that culture is quite it's a journey. And also I've always been amazed at how GE could do that in its heydays, right?
Yeah. Sri has a good question here, and as well we have Hermione, who agreed with you. She said it's tiring working for managers who do not take stands, even if it's just a personal opinion, at least. And thanks for contributing in on that. Let's see here. Also, Daniel says that a lot of managers put people down. How do we break through that without offending them? And then Sri, I'm going to come to your question after that. Okay. So I think this is a very interesting, occurrence, especially here in Singapore. And I'd like to add some context to that myself. But Joelle, I'll let you share thoughts first. But coming from New York, definitely the way managers react to situations is different here.
Yes. I like that questions, because I witness it. So there are a few kinds of managers. I always think that, I think there's two kinds, right? One that surround themselves with very obedient and submissive employees, and kind of like is like a boss type of relationship. I say you do, don't question type of thing, and I think it feeds from a little bit of insecurity. And then there's a second type of managers that actually build a star team and surround himself with people who are better than him, right? And again, back in the G days, we are always given this charter: you want to work yourself out of a job. Succession planning. Someone should be able to take over your job so that you can move,
That's
right?
the same
So
thing Alex said last time during the last webinar. He said
yes,
always works himself out of a job.
yes,
There
because
it-
so from a company perspective, we always strive to be on that job for 18 months and not longer, because we want to move on to something more exciting, right? So then later on, Jeff changed it to, okay, you got to stay for at least 2 or 3 years so that we have that continuity, right? But when you have that thinking and culture in place, the manager doesn't feel like, oh, I'm going to be out of job as in fired, but no, I'm moving. When your employees move, you naturally move up the ladder, right? So going back to managers that put people down, right? So I think how I look at it is that, I have a fair share of, that experience myself. And in the younger days, in my rash days, I would react to it, right? It's like, oh my God, you suck, and I quit, right? I put in my resignation. But now that I'm older and wiser, I look back and I go like, what is the trigger of that comment that is putting me down, right? There must be a trigger. Does he really think that I suck? Because after all, you hired me or you inherited. And when was the last time, like 3 months ago, 6 months ago, during our review, did you tell me that I suck and I need to, work on this particular lack of performance, right? So I would look at what is the trigger point. And a lot of times, I think the trigger comes top down, right? He's under some kind of stress to deliver, to anxiety because there's a deadline coming. So I try to look at that. Is it at the subject itself, the immediate? That's why you're putting me down because I'm not able to deliver and make you look good. Because a lot of times I notice here as well, manager is all about you need to do whatever you can to make sure that I don't embarrass myself in front of my peers, right? So it's about making me look good, and there will be managers who put others down so that he will always have the upper hand, right? So he will always feel that he's bigger than you and better than you. So unless you have a better job offer outside, this person maybe is going through a tough time at home, but maybe is really a not very nice person. What I would do, I've learned, is I would compliment, and sometimes you just need to stroke the person's ego a little bit, right? And give him credit for the things that, as hard as it may sound, sometimes I'm sure you can find some quality in your manager to highlight and give him the affirmation. People like that tend to have insecurity, which means he's not getting enough affirmation, so he needs to put you down to make himself feel better. So what I found working is I would give more affirmation to that manager who's putting me down and see if it works. And I think 9 out of 10 times, I think when you give the manager the credit and the affirmation, they feel better about themselves. They stop doing that. So I would say try it. I mean, in my scenario, it's worked, right? Because think about it, why is that person doing that? Picking on me? And, if it is a situation whereby, we're just not meant to be working together, then yeah, I would say just leave. Don't even bother. But if it's just, is it continuous, or is it, there must be a underlying current and root cause. Is it something subliminal? He's trying to tell me that I'm not doing correct, that I am not helping him be successful, right? Or that person is probably in need of some hugs and affirmation, right?
Okay.
Why? Think about children, right? If you're a parent, which most of you are not because you're young, but kids, right? We have children, right? Why do kids act? So yes, in my my career as a manager, and then I became a mom, I actually apply a lot of my parenting episode and experience in managing people, right? Why do your kids act out and cry?
Because they
because they
want
want
to.
attention. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Why do they do that? You tell them, don't do that. They want attention, right?
That's
They
right.
need affirmation and attention. So I think managers who put you down, probably he's not getting the validation from his boss, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He's probably not getting the love attention maybe from his partner or her partner. So there's always an underlying root cause. So rather than jumping to, oh, you're just being mean, try to peel the onion a little bit and understand what is driving that behavior and see if you can crack the code, right? So I like to read, I'm not big of a big reader, but I like to read Psychology Today. It's probably one of my favorite, um, you know, uh, magazine, whatever. It talks a lot, and I always thought that if I were to have time to go back to college, I would definitely major in social science and psychology. I think this is definitely besides technology, this is definitely a course that should be very popular and hard
Mhm.
um, in this time and age, right? Psychology and social science is in the sense that mastering the art of reading people, understanding people, you have a better appreciation, you're able to manage people better,
Mm.
and reading all the signs and symptoms, right? So that we become more we become more thoughtful and insightful rather than reactive, right? Then you can really get to being predictive and, all right, I think I know how you're going to behave if I were to say this and say that. And I've done a lot of this myself, whereby I would test people by throwing out provocative stuff, and just to see the reaction, just to get the conversation going, right? Does it mean I say, oh, I love Trump, oh my god? Can you imagine? but but straight away you get to see who reacts to it and who respond and how they respond, and based on that you can very quickly make some high level judgment and assessment on how that person thinks, right?
That's right.
So
Go ahead, go ahead.
so I think when it comes to tough bosses, I would say that there's a driver behind it,
Mm.
right? Top down, the ecosystem, depending the kind of organization you're in, but first be kind, and then rather than react negatively. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, human nature, unless you're a really, really, really bad person, and I'm not using that word, right? Nobody will respond negatively to a good gesture, a good compliment. You know what I'm saying? Because the minute you pay, if somebody is like just going after you and say, hey, that was a really good idea you just said, yesterday, straight away you can test it out. That whole aggressiveness just die down, right?
Yep.
Right?
So this is
Yeah.
Joelle, this has been fantastic. This type of, and I hope, Shri, you got some answer to your question as well. One of them is understand parenting. I like that a lot. It's so true. It's a very good point. Don't underestimate that at all. There's one last question here, Joelle, that I didn't want to miss, and we have like 30 seconds, and then I
Okay.
need to close us out with some things for everyone to keep in mind. I just want to put this on here too. This is Joelle's LinkedIn, so please feel free to connect with her on LinkedIn here, if you're interested. And we also, of course, this is supported by our STMI, so the Strategic Technology Management Institute, and this has been the organization that puts this together. So I'm just putting links here for you all. And there's the FinTech SG, which is a wonderful program. Joelle is one of our faculty members there. Hope you'll be able to talk with her as well. Joelle, last question here from Bernard. Hi, Joelle. I can somehow relate myself to you, as I am an accountancy grad and started off as an auditor. But do you think if it's really worth the effort for mid-career people to move to IT? Would it be too late to do so?
No, it's never too late, especially if you're a finance person by training, because I always say everything flows on to the GL, right? If you know the full P&L and balance sheet, it's really easy for you to work upstream to process and the system and all that goes behind it. Now, when you talk about IT, it doesn't mean, I think a lot of people think about, oh, it's coding, programming, and all that. There's a lot of, the topic is really wide. It's beyond programming and technical. There's a lot of functional aspect and business process aspect and system aspect to it that is under this whole broad technology umbrella. And keeping in mind that as a finance audit person, right? I think there's a huge and I mean, forget about like currently everything is driven by tech. And a lot of things we do, even an audit, can be automated with tech. So even more so, regardless of your background, I think in your 40s, it's never too late to move into technology in a broader sense, not just coding and development. I'll share this book title with you guys that you have to go look up, right? I just met this guy seriously over at my wine bar. His name is Mark Hui. He's a CEO of First Media Group over at Keong Saik Road. He wrote a book called Think Like a Sage, Work Like a Fool, Act Like a Criminal. So go read that book. But what's interesting about this character is that he attempted O levels 4 times. So academically, not there, right? And he worked 20 different blue collar and odd jobs in his 20s and 30s. And he got to be a CEO of FMG, which is a media design school, at the age of 44. That is mid-career, isn't it? At 44, he finally found his space where he really excelled after, having worked as a swim coach, a forklift driver, delivery office boy. And at 44, right? This is mid-career, right? He built this company and he had a 6.6 million takeover offer from a UK company. Now, this is somebody that is totally against the grain, right? Not from your elite school, right? Straight A's, didn't go to, college until much later. So I think that it's never too late to change. Right? At least give yourself a chance and don't pigeonhole yourself, right? Talk to us, talk to Keith and myself, happy to share experience. It can go beyond just coding, Python programming and building apps and all that.
That's
you know,
right.
technology is very wide. It's so wide, I can have like weeks and months of lecture around it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Natalie asked, and just to pick up on what you said, ask Joelle or ask these questions afterwards. You're welcome to connect on LinkedIn and other things if you have more questions. Natalie asks, now we're working from home, how to increase rapport with the team. That's so true. We have to just meet up, say hello, ask them out for coffee or something as well. See if they'll do a one-to-one Zoom session with you, which maybe is as close as you can get in some circumstances. But otherwise, take that time to have coffee. There's a wonderful bar called Frenchie Wine Bar,
Yes.
which Joelle owns. You might want to check that out with your new colleagues as well.
Yes. Talk about transformation. I'm now inspired and I want to change the F&B industry. Yes, I bought a bar just before COVID, and it's been a very exciting journey. I'll just say that as an accountant, the first thing I did, I took over the books. My first March close, after everything, I made $6.86 net profit. I was like, no. And then phase 1 kicked in. There's been like lots of burning of money, April, May, June. But I'm happy to say that we turned it around and we're making more than just $6.86. And that's called, and that's what I did. I pushed my chef, my folks on the floor the same way I push people in GE and every company, right? And I'll say, I'm gonna do this once, twice, 3 times, nobody came along. I just do, and they just came along. It works. It's really, it totally is amazing. I just apply the same principle, right? First, I try to understand what is their need, what drives them, what motivates them. And then right down to asking about, how's the daughter doing? She's sick, why don't you go early? I mean, yeah, I went from 3 to 6 staff in 1 month, and with the same had 4 E's and a P, right? Energy, energize, age, execution, and passion, and respect the people because they know more than I do, right? I only know how to eat and drink, but my sommelier definitely know how to pick out a good bottle, tell me what it's worth. My chef definitely know how to cook French food. I just know how to eat them. And the first thing I do every time I go down to Frenchie was I go to the kitchen, I greet my chef, my main chef, my sous chef. I say, good afternoon, chef, and it means a lot to them when I do that, right? I greet all my staff. It's called servitude, right? And, that whole service attitude. I'm there to serve you, not the other way around, right? Even though they call me Lady Boss, I said, I'm there to serve you. Tell me, right? I go from cleaning toilet to ordering toilet paper. I do it all on the admin side because that's my strength.
Wow.
Right? So have that mentality, even when you're dealing with difficult bosses, right? Have that mentality. I think it's in the Bible too, right, Keith? That whole service mentality is it's not hard to adopt, but it takes a while to get used to, especially you've been there, done that. There's a tendency to think that you know better, right? Because why? I've got a college degree. I think that's crap, right? Throw that out of the window. Different industry, different expertise. They have the experience I don't, right? So how do I serve them to make their job easier so that we can grow and hit it out of the ballpark, right? So yes, Frenchie Wine Bar. I'm there almost every day. It's a great place to connect and network, I have to say. Yes, I've met a lot of interesting corporate folks, people that came around, and we talk for hours. Yeah, just talk. Yes.
Well, wonderful. Joelle, thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
time. I know that you have, you juggle a lot of things of work, from advising some of the largest companies in the world to advising some of the brightest leaders personally, and on to now running a wine bar as well, right in the middle of Tanjong Pagar. And of course, with your wonderful daughter, making sure she's all ready for school and everything else. So
Yes.
a lot of things in the air, and yet she has still offered to you to connect as well if you have questions and what have you. It's really very good. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today and coming out. We'll hang around for a little bit longer, but I just wanted to, at least for those of you who had booked this for just an hour, this is the main part of the program, and we'll wrap it up here with some of Joelle's key takeaways for us. Number one, keep learning. Never stop learning. You're never too old to be learning. And that chairman, you didn't mention, but that chairman that you work for in the Indonesian company,
Yes.
he learns a lot, right?
He reads a lot. He's so hungry for. I mean, like I said, he spent like Monday to Fridays working on all his different conglomerate businesses, right? Weekends from like 7 a.m. to like past midnight, he'll be talking to vendors, investors, and they'll give him material to read, and he'll just read them in his private jet and then pass it on to his second lieutenant, third. It's like, it's just learns, just love to read and learn.
Joelle also said that you have 100 days on a job. This is a great book by Michael Watkins. It's a
Yes.
book that I've carried with me since it was given to me as a gift. You can see all my
All the
tabs
text.
as well. Highly, highly recommend picking up this book from Amazon or wherever you can get it at Takashimaya. Support your local retailers too. Fantastic way to get into any new role and know how to make a difference on it. That's critical as well. So, and this is great to, and by one last thing that Joelle talked about is network. Make sure to share and make you connect with your friends and everything else. You're not in this alone. Don't try to go it alone, ever. always get someone else connect, bounce ideas, you know, whatever it might be. And yet that will just help you be even more successful in achieving your dreams. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Have a great day. And again, we'll hang around for a little bit, but otherwise we'll see you again at our next session.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye all.